Welcome, everybody. Happy Wednesday. Is it Wednesday? It's Wednesday. Welcome. We will get started in just a minute. Hi, Ashley. Oh, Ashley, I miss you. Ashley was on my programming committee a couple years ago. Hi, Lakeisha. Kaisha is the president of Namick, Virginia. Nice to see people coming in. These folks are trickling in. We're going to have a great discussion this evening. This is Namick, New York's first event of the year. I'm so excited to be celebrating Black History Month with this important discussion. So everybody get ready, get your notes out, get your pens, your paper, get ready to be interactive. We want questions, we want to hear from you. We want to know, how imposter syndrome has affected you and in what ways. So let me see what time it is. Give it like 2 more minutes. Welcome. I hope everyone's doing well. It's a nice day in New York City. Finally, we get some decent weather. I don't think it's going to last, but I'll take it.
I will take it too. I don't want you to think you're the only one appreciating the nice weather.
I got to enjoy some of it as well.
St.
Louis.
Hi, Brandy. Hi, Lynette. Lynette is the immediate past president of Namick, Atlanta. So welcome, Lynette. Well, Lynette is rubbing it in. She says it's 74 degrees down in Atlanta. Okay, I'm just gonna give it like 1 more minute. I see people are trickling in. I know it's like right after work and you're trying to close out your work and kind of transition into after work. So I appreciate everyone coming and being here with us this evening. Oh, the DMV had a nice day too. And that's not that far for you to have better weather than us. Welcome, people. I feel connected even though we're not connected. I miss everyone so much. I just miss you all. I just miss being in your presence. These are my folks here. Hopefully soon we'll all see each other in person. All right, so I'm gonna get started. Hi, Kina, thanks for joining us. I am really happy to be here. Like I said, this is Namick, New York's first event of the year. I'm happy that we have a great discussion, something important, and something that affects all of us. So for those who don't know me, my name is Radia Barnes, and I am the president of the New York chapter of the National Association for Multi-Ethnicity and Communications. We are the leading diversity organization for people of color in the communication space. And we put on events such as this, usually in person, during COVID. We do networking events, panel discussions, fireside chats, workshops. Namick National also has a great leadership and mentoring program that we have. So if you're not a member, look into it, ask your employer if they'll cover your fees, and join us. I look forward to maybe in the spring, definitely in the summer, doing some in-person events so we can all kind of connect and get back together. So excited now for our feature event. We have 2 great speakers. We're going to be speaking about imposter syndrome. And I just want to quickly read what imposter syndrome is. It's the experience of someone who feels like a fraud intellectually and or professionally. People who are experiencing imposter syndrome feel like they are not good enough, like they don't belong, or that they are a fraud, and it's only a matter of time before they are found out. Imposter syndrome is the experience of not feeling intelligent enough despite one's achievements. And I have a quote here that says about 70% of Americans have experienced imposter syndrome, but it particularly takes a heavy toll on people of color. So we're going to speak to our esteemed panelists here. I'm going to introduce them and read their bios very quickly. First up, we have Haywood Bachelor. Am I saying your name correctly? Haywood Bachelor?
Right on the money.
And I'm going to quickly read Haywood's bio. We have a condensed version because when I tell you these two gentlemen, they are really on it. They are really doing a lot in professionally, a lot in the community. So I'm so happy to have them. So Haywood is a digital media and event production veteran with over 20 years of industry experience. Over the course of his career, he has led initiatives to expand the reach of HBO Go to over 75 MVPDs, managed large-scale executive events for American Express and Lehman Brothers, and directed a multicam streaming experience for the NFL. Today at YouTube, he leads an amazing team responsible for the operational relationships for major content partners like Disney, NBCU, and Discovery. In addition, he's proud to lead diversity initiatives that generate safe spaces for DEI-focused conversations and activities. He received a BS in Broadcast Communications from Morgan State University, an MS in Corporate Communications and Public Relations from NYU, and is also an alumni of the NAMIC Leadership Program. Woohoo! Shout out to NAMIC. Thank you for joining us, Haywood. And then we have Daniel Adeyanju. Did I pronounce that right? We should have like went over the last name.
Adeyanju, but you don't worry about it. I think you did quite well. Thank you so much.
Daniel is passionate about creating pathways to economic security through career development and entrepreneurship. He is a talent development expert, career coach, former product manager, and corporate software engineer. In every sphere he enters, he utilizes the tools of innovation to design better futures. He is currently the director of student development at Cura Labs, where he ensures that infrastructure automation fellows are prepared for the technical and professional aspects of work. Dan is also a servant at his Bronx-based church, and most importantly, the husband of Emily. A proud always Bronxite, Dan currently lives in Jersey City and is an alum of Binghamton University, Cooney Lehman College, and the Bronx High School of Science. Thank you for joining us, Daniel.
Thank you so much for having me and for making this happen.
Wonderful. So we're going to start it off. We're going to get right to it. I have a question for the both of you. Everyone's journey to imposter syndrome is different, but the destination is the same. Can you both share your individual story with imposter syndrome and how you were able to identify the symptoms? And we'll start with Daniel.
It's a great question. And I love how that was even framed. It's a journey to imposter syndrome because we're not born with imposter syndrome. I was talking to a mother who's potentially interested in our program, and in encouraging her, because I could hear some of the, just general lack of confidence in her voice, I could tell. I asked her whether her 1-year-old was worried about his ability to work. If he had imposter syndrome, about his ability to walk, sorry. So we weren't born with imposter syndrome. So how did I get there? I believe that society put various different pressures out there and certain identity crises in my purview that caused me to get to the point where I believe that I'm an imposter. I think what's key to the definition is that you are not an imposter. It is a lie. And we actually want to get to the truth. And my experience with imposter syndrome more generally has been one such that, fast forwarding from being a kid and learning to walk, I think I handle that like a champ. I'll focus. I want to focus in on kind of getting software engineering because I think it's a really good kind of case study, simply because there's just so much to do to become a software engineer. But I also take it a step backwards to the Bronx High School of Science, which for some reason is the last thing I mentioned there. It's somewhat impressive for a New Yorker to go to Bronx Science. It's a school you have to test into. Very few Black people go there. Which doesn't do well for your psyche. I'll tell you that. In some ways, I'm a survivor. When you go to a school like this, I went to a Catholic school where I was a top performer. And I'm just saying this just truthfully without trying much. I'm not bragging. That's like the reality of it. And that actually was a big disservice to me in that I get to the school, everyone is smart. Suddenly being smart matters less. It's actually, do you have study skills? Do you have study partners? No, because I'm from the Bronx and nobody else from where I'm from is there. Which we'll talk about the importance of community. I didn't have community. I didn't have, I definitely had, I'm blessed to have two Nigerian parents who will both tell you that you're the smartest person in the world because of the family you belong to, and that you know nothing. I mean, not that you know nothing, but that your 98 is 2 points away from 100. So that's the household I grew up with. Now I go to the school where everyone was getting 98s and 100s, and the level has increased and the game has changed. And I'm suddenly a fish out of water with limited supports who understand that context. So to be quite frank with you, I didn't do as well as I could have done in that context. And I always wondered, am I smart? Now, objectively, this test has already validated me. So there's a truth there. And then society and the context and grades are telling me the lie that I'm not good enough. So that's one of my first experiences that I just thought of. I just realized this now because of the brilliant question you asked. And then software engineering more generally, you're entering a world where things are changing constantly every moment. I'm sure there's some software engineers in the room, marketers, things are changing by the minute as well. Communications folks, things are changing by the moment. And it's quite easy to come into a role and feel like you are not good enough because there's just so much, you're comparing yourself to the guy or gal who hired you, and they're an expert. They can do all these things that you simply can't do because you completed a boot camp that was only 3 months long, or you've only been in school for 4 years studying computer science, of which, let's be honest, what percentage of that was actually spent coding? Sometimes the boot campers actually spend more time coding. You now need to rely on something other than what you know now. And, somewhat revealing kind of my experience and what I've learned over time. But I believe I've had those experiences. I would say that I didn't fully come to terms with imposter syndrome until maybe January of this year. And I'll talk, at some point we'll talk about what got me there. And it's very personal to me. And I believe that everyone will have their own journey out of imposter syndrome. And shout out to y'all in the chat, like Haywood and Radia, who've never experienced it. I appreciate you. I'm trying to be like y'all.
Well, we can't say that, but Haywood, tell us a little bit about your journey.
So, Radia, I want to first say thank you again for inviting Danielle and I to this panel. Imposter syndrome is something that it's really near and dear to me, and I will say it hit me like a ton of bricks when I started working at YouTube. So, just some quick background on my journey. I was at HBO before that for about 8 years, and I was a director there. I reached a level of comfort where I knew the technology, I knew who to talk to get things done. I was, moving and shaking and doing my thing. I had a team. It was great. And then I got approached with the YouTube opportunity. And I think imposter syndrome really comes about when there's change that happens in your life. And when those changes happen, you're hit with just a shift in this scenario that you have to try to process. And imposter syndrome is a negative way of processing that. So what happened was I interviewed for the job at YouTube. Just some background on getting YouTube is owned by Google. Some background on the stats on working here. It's, I think, about 2 to 3 million people apply each year to try to work at this company, and maybe anywhere between 0.6 to 2% of those applications actually turn into actual jobs at the company. So walking in the door, there's this little bit of like, how did I get in here? What am I doing here? What did I do that was so special? And if you can't really accurately answer that question, if you don't have that self-confidence, there's a little bit of intimidation that's going to come about. And that hit me, like I said, like a ton of bricks. I came from this space where I was really confident, I was really comfortable. And now I'm working in this company where, I think Daniel was talking about at a school where everybody is smart. Everyone is a high achiever. And you forget that you're a high achiever too. But because the imposter syndrome hits, now you're starting to take on all of these aspects of what it's doing. It's making you feel like you shouldn't be there. It's making you feel like you're a fraud. And I relate it to like compounding interest on an investment. So it's like you have one negative thought that leads to two, that leads to four, that leads to eight. And now all of a sudden, things that you're doing in the company is reinforcing that. You're like, oh my gosh, did I not close that email my salutation wasn't right? It's taking you 2 hours to do tasks that would normally take you 15 minutes because you don't want to be found out. That happened to me the first, we call it, cycle at Google. And my boss, who's a good friend of mine, he pulled me aside and we had a talk. He's like, listen, you're not the guy that I know who you are. I think I know what's going on here. You're not performing the way I want you to perform. And I said, oh my gosh, what's going on here? So then I went to a brother of mine who works there, who I knew from a previous life. And he pulled me aside and he was like, hey, what you're going through imposter syndrome. He said, a lot of Black people do it here. And he said, it's so casual. It was so like, we know exactly what this is. And he broke it down for me. He said, basically, you combat imposter syndrome with facts and being able to take a look back at who you are so that you feel confident enough to take risks that will allow you to shine. And that clicked. So like you have to name these things so that you can move forward. So that essentially was my journey. Everything corrected itself, back on track. There was no problems after that. But that, it really takes a toll on you, especially if you are a high achiever and all of a sudden you've been introduced with these feelings of lack of confidence and you don't know where they're coming from.
Most definitely. And I can relate to both of your stories where I have a background in telecommunications sales. That's where I have spent the majority of my career. I just recently pivoted just this year, but telecommunications sales, nobody looks like me hardly. Older white men. I looked for mentors or people who I could relate to, and really there was any. So it was always a very, kind of isolating. And then you're like, why am I here? Like, I look so different. I am so different, different background, different education. So I can definitely relate to, that kind of that workflow. And then also what you said about new experiences. Now that I've pivoted, I'm in a brand new industry, a brand new role, and I kind of, I feel that kind of put offness. Like, I'm like, okay, like, how did I get here? Why did I get here? Am I going to do a good job? Am I doing a good job? So it's definitely, I'm experiencing it. And I have experienced it a lot in the past. I'm going to try to do a poll. People, please, please, please bear with me. This is the first time. Let me see here. I just want to know about how many people have experience in coming in. Oh, it looks like majority of folks.
Radia, I just want to say you handled that poll like a champ. So don't even worry about it. Do it all the time.
So good. Yeah, and imposter syndrome doesn't only have to be professionally, it could be in other aspects of your life. So yes. So it looks like everybody answered. We got maybe 2 no's out of everyone who is on the call. So 93% of people on this call have experienced imposter syndrome. That is a big deal. So I want to know, Haywood, can you tell me when and where are some places that you've experienced imposter syndrome and how did you combat it?
Well, definitely work is the biggest place, obviously. I think it has something to do with lack of community sometimes. So I think one of the strongest ways or the kryptonite to imposter syndrome is having conversations like this where we can continue the conversation going forward and supporting each other. But work is definitely a place. And if you're new to a place and you don't have that community to support you, to lean on, to say like, no, we all feel this, or this is what you need to combat it, or to provide you some direction or some reinforcement, it's really a tough challenge to try to fight on your own. So I would say the way I actually went about it is once I spoke to my friend, he gave me some direction. I really did a lot of research and reflection, which is research into what it is. So you kind of deep dive into like, this is not a Haywood thing. It's not a Daniel thing. It's a thing that happens to people who are going through change and they feel a certain kind of way about it. And then there's reflection where I think the more successful you get, the more you minimize your accomplishments and you maximize your failures sometimes. And that's a problem, right? So like we don't celebrate our accomplishments the way we should. And then we go into this, you have imposter syndrome and you're starting to focus on your failures a little bit more than your accomplishments. So taking that step back and saying like, oh, no, I've accomplished this and I've done that and I've had this amazing ideas. And that voice in your head starts to change a little bit from just reinforcing all the negative things that are coming up. And now you have a voice that can combat it, that's telling you all the positive things about you. And it's something that really does exist in your head. So I would say research and reflection, building community, and making sure that you are changing that voice in your head so that you are focusing on positive attributes about what you bring to the table, as opposed to some of those negative things that are telling you that you're not supposed to be there.
Mm-hmm. And those positive affirmations, something you could do is something that I have done. It's called a brag me list, or a list of your wins. I call it my list of wins, and it's just kind of writing down. And I love to write things down on paper. I'm not really sorry Google, sorry YouTube. I like to write things down. I have my pen and my paper, and I write things down and things that I've accomplished. And I like to see that list, and I like to look back on the list, and I like to add to it, reflect on it. And it really does make me feel better. And it makes me feel a little bit more confident. Daniel, how about you?
Oh man, so I love this question. We're getting straight to the solutions. You know how much I fiend for that. And happy Black Future History Month to everybody in the room. I think this is a very timely conversation, given that, I don't know if you noticed, there's a groundswell of folks on Twitter and Black Tech Twitter and such forums that are looking to, advance in their careers. And communities like this are really important, like NAMIC, are really important to providing that community that Haywood just mentioned, which is very much the antidote, the kryptonite to imposter syndromes. I don't want to say Superman, but that would kind of fit in there. So I'm going to echo many of the things that Brother Haywood just mentioned, and I'll to the extent that I can connect the dots a little bit and give examples from my experience. And I really appreciate the surgical way and the way that Haywood kind of broke that down in a way that I could never. You started out with talking about how it's triggered. This is an emotion. If we understand this is an emotional event, there must be a trigger, and you must understand that trigger to understand that it is natural and you can mitigate that. So if that trigger is changing in context, I gave the example, I go to a new high school, there's a context switch. And I was not prepared in 8th grade to make that switch in context. And my community, my immediate community, which is very much the source of my success in so many ways, was not prepared to support me in that way. That's okay. So how might I, or any of us in a moment of transition, bridge that gap? I believe it starts with community. Everything that I do starts with people. My 4 Ps of career success starts with people. You must find people that will help you to get to your destination. Your destination in high school, it was to be an A student. That is a metric that someone has established, that there are ways to get to that metric. In work, it's not as clear what an A is, what it means, success is. You usually work that out with your manager. So it is helpful, just as a point, to know what success looks like, so that you don't have this non-existent, perfect, this perfect state that you're reaching for. You will not reach that perfect state because it's perfect. It's perfection. Everybody wants to be perfect, we can work towards perfection and being as best as we can, but there's a process that precedes that. I didn't mean to do that alliteration, but I used to rap in high school. So that came out a little bit. So in that process, it's really key that you have those people who are supporting you. And I believe, again, NAMIC being an example, if you're a communication professional, if you're a marketer, if you're someone who is in the business of convincing people of things, you will want to be around people who've done that work at a high level, who can affirm you. And, it doesn't have to be professionals. It could be, in your field, it could be people from different fields, your friends, people that you trust them such that you will believe their truth. We already know that imposter syndrome is believing a falsity, believing a lie. You need people who are telling you the truth. We talked about voices in stories. What story are you telling yourself? So that first voice is yourself. I can control what I'm telling myself because I am myself, right? I don't got to explain it to anybody. Like, you have power. If there's anything that anybody you have control over, it's yourself. You have control over what inputs you're getting. So, I say that liberally. I understand that you actually may not be able to not be around someone who is not speaking to you the best way. I pray that you do get an opportunity to not be around that person, or to modify, or for that person to change their behavior. But not even ideally, what you want to do, what we all strive to do, is to surround ourselves with people who are affirming us and also are honest. So I can trust you. So it's one thing for somebody like, yo, you're great, you're perfect. That's also kind of a lie too, because I know perfection is an ideal that I'm working towards, but actually what I need is somebody who's gonna give me the real. So feedback is a gift. So community of people that are building you up, and part of that construction is giving you constructive feedback, right? So again, voices, who are those voices? I start with myself. I surround myself with folks in a community like NAMIC. It could be on Twitter in addition. It could be at your church, could be your family, right? You find those folks who will give you those positive, not those folks who are telling you, nah, you can't do that software engineering thing. Nah, a manager, you shouldn't really apply for that job. You don't check off all the boxes. I'm sorry to tell you, they lying. Like, you don't need to check off all the boxes to get the job, right? So I need truth telling. I need to surround myself with a community of truth telling voices who are telling me the right stories, starting with myself.
Most definitely. And I think another way at work where you can find community is through your employee resource group. That's a place where you can find like-minded people who may look like you, people who may have similar backgrounds, kind of form that type of community at work. I always encourage people to join their employee resource group. Lakeisha had said something that I liked. She said, someone told me that when I experience these thoughts in my head, to stop it in its tracks and say and answer the question, who told you that? And if you answer no one, then change it to the positive language about what you're saying to yourself, which I think is really great.
That part, yeah, that was fire.
Thank you, Lakai. So this has always been an issue. Imposter syndrome has probably been around since the beginning of time. It's always been an issue. But why do you think we're talking about it so much now? And why do you think people of color, which may be an obvious question, but why do you think people of color are so affected by it? And I'll go ahead with.
So I can break that down, I think, into two parts. I think there is a lack of emotional vulnerability that people have in general, where you don't want to share things that are going to have you show up less. You're going to, oh, this person has an imposter syndrome. They're not going to perform as well. I don't know what's going on with him, but he's got something going on. We got to keep that on the inside, right? For people of color and for Black people in particular, you can't have cracks at work. You can't show up with problems. You can't, half the time you can't even really use your own voice. You have to change your voice. So you kind of sound like this. So you can't all of a sudden also show up with imposter syndrome and then try to talk to people in the office and try to share that with them. So you kind of keep that all on the inside. I think the beauty is more people are starting to come out because I just look at how the world is changing in general. People are becoming more in touch with their emotions. They're more willing to share. Social media has opened it up so that we feel, there are negative aspects to it, but there's a lot of positive where we're actually sharing these feelings and emotions. And now if you go and you look up an article on imposter syndrome, you learn like, oh, this is something that is real, that affects a lot of people. It's not just me. Are there people at work that feel the same way? Then all of a sudden you're connecting with those people and you form that sense of community. So I think that's one of the triggers that's opening it up. Like, think about, what we're doing today. I don't think 10 years ago that would have been the case. We wouldn't have been sitting around talking about imposter syndrome in a forum like this. So, I thank you for driving this and making this conversation possible, so that now the folks that are in this particular session, we will now go out and spread the word, and we'll know the signs and can identify folks that are suffering from imposter syndrome and direct them in the right place so that they have a community to lean on.
What do you think about that, Daniel?
So I'll take a different approach, and I agree with everything that Haywood said. Just masterful in your presentation and the way you broke down the problem into those two parts. Why I'm literally seeing, and it could be that we're doing this talk and I'm just noticing everywhere. I have been personally thinking about identity at the outset of this year a lot. And I told you that I have been able to turn the tables on imposter syndrome in just a couple of weeks. It was a matter in the past couple of weeks. So it's timely that you'd reach out to me and ask me to be on this panel. And I greatly appreciate this opportunity to be here. And so the way I want to answer this is, it seems like a lot of folks are talking about it. It sounds like that's the origin of the question. I'm going to posit here, I might be shooting in the dark, but I do believe that given the events of the recent the noticing of police brutality and deaths of Black men, things of the sort, there have been increased initiatives around empowering the Black community. I think that is the milieu that we're in. And companies made great commitments to hiring Black, empowering Black, investing in Black, all these great things. And there's so many, there's reasons why they of course, it looks good on paper. It's, there's a chain of thought that not deploying that capital, they actually, there's no contract for them to deploy that capital. Just saying it is already good for them. And these companies do not understand the problem well enough, or care, frankly, in my opinion, enough to actually solve the problem. And there's many different problems, systemic in nature. One of the downstream impacts of it is imposter syndrome. I do believe that it affects a lot of folks for even applying for some of these jobs that folks should be able to work. It affects folks when they're getting in the job, from keeping the jobs and excelling in the jobs. This is something that folks have just not been talking about enough until now. When we talk about it, boot camps will talk about it, like everyone has it. Unfortunately, you'll bring this up, and I've seen this multiple occasions. You'll mention this and they'll say, well, Black people and women experience it more. Black women probably experience it most. And you hear a white guy be like, well, I have it too a little bit. It's like, come on, man, it's a different game. So that's why I think the context is, right? There is actually, at least on paper, let's talk about tech, where I play, it's almost blank charts. Like, yo, you can go blank chart or whatever the French is. You can hop on and learn these skills and get a job in theory. But where a lot of us will struggle is with the emotional aspect of becoming this thing that is like really vaunted, requires a lot of effort, requires a ton of community, by the way. And we're lacking in those things in the context of getting to tech. So that's how I would paint the broader picture for why it's being talked about. And I think it's really important that we're talking about in Black Futures Month. Thank you, Haywood, for spreading the good gospel of Black Futures Month, right? We are honoring the history. I appreciate you. We're honoring the history. So sometimes I say history/future, BH/FM, right? Because I want us to always, oh, you got it, yeah. We're thinking about the history, but the future is what we're actually trying to build. So we're not only lamenting the past, we're recognizing the past and saying we've actually survived as a collective Black race globally, tons of trauma, and we're moving towards a greater thing. I believe tech is part of that story. And in order to access some of those opportunities in that world, many of which are communications ones, we're all communicators in some way. We need to understand our emotions, understand our identity. Who am I for real? Can't nobody tell me otherwise. Let's go get this money. I'll rest my case.
That's right. Yeah, and I also think, we're kind of removing the stigma of, mental health. People are feeling a little bit more comfortable talking about, issues. We're willing to share a little bit more. So I also think that has kind of contributed a little bit to this phenomena being, so talked about. I mean, over the past probably 2-3 years, I've heard so much about it. And before that, I probably didn't even know there was a term for it. So I am happy that it's coming to light and we're able to express ourselves and kind of assist each other through it. But the majority of us, not me, because you can see I'm still at work from home due to COVID. How do you think COVID and working from home now has impacted imposter syndrome? Haywood, what do you think?
This is a great question because I turn to the folks who started a new job during COVID, and they're coming into a space where they don't really have a chance to absorb the culture. They don't really have a chance to connect with people and network in a way that makes them feel comfortable inside of a new organization. And what tends to happen is that's when the imposter syndrome kicks in, because you are thinking that everyone else is great. Everyone else isn't going through the same potential problems or challenges. You're not able to look at the amount of work that they're doing. You're not able to have those personal connections with people. So RTO, we return to office, that's what we call it at work. Work from home has just intensified those feelings, because at the end of the day, a lot of us are just sitting in our living rooms or sitting in our library, in our offices by ourselves all day, with these very scripted conversations with people because everything's over video conference, and we're not getting to know anyone on a personal level, which helps break down some of those barriers and perceptions that you have of the folks around you. Because the thing about imposter syndrome is that you're perceiving that everyone else looks at you as a fraud. You're perceiving that everyone else is saying, like, who can't do this job, Haywood? He can't do it. And that's not the case. But because you're not interacting with them, because you're not able to show your stuff the way you want to, and if you're new to a role, it really puts you in a box that that really intensifies those feelings. There's a little bit of isolationism that happens there, that you have to almost try double hard to form that network, double hard to build that community, double hard to really prove who you are and be willing to take risks so that you can shine. So that's how I think that COVID and work from home has intensified how imposter syndrome impacts the community, and specifically, Black people and people of color. It's hard enough for us to go into a new office or a new job and build that community. This just makes it potentially that much harder.
Most definitely. I think, and you don't know what anybody else is doing, really. So you're like, is that person performing? What is that person doing? What am I doing in comparison? So I definitely agree with that. Daniel, what do you think?
I agree 100%. And I think just kind of getting to the solutioning a little bit. And what do I agree with? And I think you're very instructive to just think about folks who are just hopping in, right? And I'm seeing them and I feel for them. And I'm already I'm always trying to think 10 steps ahead for folks, right? Or with folks. Cause I'm like, you're hopping to this company, they're hiring you online. They have no emotional connection to you yet. And it's harder to build that. You are straight out of school in boom times. I was just talking to someone quite knowledgeable about the markets, and it's like, what happened when there's a contraction? The days of free money or easy money in terms of the Fed are dwindling, folks are at risk, in short. So they're not able to build those relationships. And to what extent they actually perceive that? Probably not. But there is a perceived risk, just like just being a Black person in the company. Are they going to keep me on? And there's a real risk, just in terms of first in, first out, which is a computer science type of thing, right? You get into the company when there's a contraction, you might be the first to go. So that's the kind of context that somebody who's just graduating college, for example, is getting into. And no one has really done this online thing before. And I say that, many of us have worked online or hybrid in some way, but working purely online is just becoming something that's going to be, for the foreseeable future, very common. And that brings significant challenge. What are those challenges? How do I, one, make sure that I'm doing a good job? How do I find the truth?
Bless you.
Perfect time to cough.
Sure.
So yeah, I want to figure out how to get the truth. I don't necessarily have the answer to that. There's a couple of things I can recommend, but I don't want to start coughing anytime soon. But I do want to just make sure that when we think about the solutions, I'm going to dial back to building community. So it's now required for us, even more so than before. It was always necessary for us to do this, to find our tribe in the company, to network laterally and vertically, with the folks who are your peers, as well as people in the company. You need people to know who you are in a way that will not happen serendipitously. You're not going to be at the all hands in person and bump elbows with the VP who's going to be like, I like your style. I'm going to make sure that you don't get lost in the sauce. Like, I'm going to make sure that you get to where you need to get to, because you need those allies. You need those sponsors. We don't talk about sponsors enough, who can actually put you on and say, and say your name when in rooms where you're not in, and say, hey, I think this person's doing a really great job. Like, what's going on with them? Definitely promote them. We have to now digitize that. And and this is a call for a product here or writing, like, we need documentation for folks to actually operationalize. I'm in this new company. Who should I be talking to? How do I talk to them? How do I, level set what good looks like in terms of my performance with my boss? How do I keep track of my wins? Radia, you said it right there. That brag list is actually a must. It's another call for product to put out there. There needs to be a product for that. If somebody doesn't build it the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna build it myself. We need to keep track of that. That needs to be automated so that we can, again, keep track of the truth. What have I been doing? Also, what could I be doing better? That's part of the truth as well.
Yeah.
So let's get that community, find community. Again, NAMIC, organizations like NAMIC are key for us as people of color. For developers, it's Dev Color. And companies should be paying for that, by the way. So get your companies to pay for these kinds of things so that we can have the supports that we need that our companies simply can't give us right now directly.
Most definitely. Okay, drop your questions. If you have any questions for the speakers, if you have anything that we want us to address. I'm just going to read something that I just came across. Let me see here. I'm no good without my glasses. Let me see.
Those are awesome glasses, by the way.
Thank you so much. We can hear it loud and clear when we receive almost daily messages from society that we don't truly belong. This feeling of otherness is a common occurrence in the workplace where too often we may be the only person of color present. Systematic racism can compound these feelings. Black professionals who doubt themselves, even when they're eminently qualified, are less apt to ask for a raise or to apply for a promotion. We have to really kind of get our confidence in check, really appreciate what we do, what we bring to an organization, what we bring to our families. Because we as a culture, us as a people, we're leaving a lot of money on the table I know that with, the work that I do with, negotiation, salary negotiations. So it really does begin with the confidence. So I really want us, that's something that we can all work on in 2022. I'm working on mine as well. Get your confidence together, write down those positive affirmations and the things that you have accomplished, and do it on a weekly basis, because you there's always something that you're contributing. All right, let's see if we have any.
Can I just chime in there real
Yes,
quick?
of course.
So I think fear has a lot to do with this, and to be clear, it's valid fear. It's not like, we're just making up this stuff. Like, there has been consequences for Black people in corporate America for speaking out of turn, and I don't want to say we've turned the corner or that world doesn't exist for us anymore, but I think from an imposter syndrome standpoint, there's a little bit of it's definitely rooted in fear, and being able to take a risk and step out of that to try to disprove it is how you put yourself on a path on combating imposter syndrome, because it comes and goes. It's not something that you cure and it goes away forever. Like, you got to have the personal tools and processes in place so that when you start to feel those feelings, you're like, oh, let me rely on my community, let me have my personal affirmations, and then here's like the biggest risk is asking people that you work with for feedback. And what typically happens when you have imposter syndrome is you go into a shell. You're no longer taking risks at work. You're no longer asking questions in town halls. You're no longer volunteering for projects. And you're no longer asking people for feedback, because you don't want to be found out as a fraud. Because that's what they're going to say. That's what you believe as a person suffering from imposter syndrome, when in actuality, all you should ever be doing is asking people for feedback so you can get better. So just to go back to that original point, as long as we can name it, which is imposter syndrome, and we know it's rooted in fear, there's a process and steps that we can take to get over it.
Ooh, I gotta chime in on this, man. Man,
Absolutely.
you speaking my language right now, Haywood. So that's powerful in so many respects. I read somewhere, I got to figure out where I saw this, but it really informed a lot of the thinking that I've been doing recently, that many of the emotions that we have these fancy words like anxiety and imposter syndrome, and they're all great to help us, understand, but it actually comes down to fear. That is the root emotion. And if you think back to the caveman days, that's really, we talk about fight or flight as one of the core psychological responses. That is a response to danger. Fear is a response to unrealized danger, potential danger. Now, from a spectrum of 0% to 99.99, 100%. And we have to constantly calculate how likely is it that we're going to get eaten by a lion, or how likely is it that your job is going to realize that you're a fake programmer and kick you out tomorrow, right? So again, thinking about the truth and figuring out what the truth is. I love what you said about feedback. Feedback helps us get to the truth. Feedback is a gift. Sometimes it doesn't sound like it. We should seek it out in a way that it is a gift, by cultivating our friend group such that folks are patting us on the back, but also telling us about ourselves from time to time. Those are kind of friends I like to keep around. Like my boy, Alston, who I think is watching, he let me know when he was like, yo, you haven't been sleeping lately. You haven't seen, you're tweeting at 3 a.m. You need to take a nap. You need to sleep. And you need to get these. I just saw one of the last texts he sent me. He was like, yo, here's some fish oil pills. I bought the pills, by the way. I ain't taken them yet, but baby steps. So you need people around you. And this is kind of different context where people are looking out for you and for your greater good. And I'd say the opposite of fear is what? Love. All right. So, I'm a Christian, and the Bible says that perfect love dries out fear. What are we, who are we loving, right? Love God. That's the way that I live. Love yourself. If you loving yourself, you would not be the voice that's telling yourself those things that ain't nobody else saying. And even if they is saying that, by the way, another sidebar, we are holding ourselves as way too important. Now, at once we are important, we are dope. but you are so important. I'm so important that everybody's talking about me plotting on my downfall. Stop lying. Nobody worried about you. Nobody worried about me. Yes, there's gonna be hate. There's, and I've seen this. I experienced. We all experienced this. I'm not gonna say when. Where you can perceive that somebody is feeling fear based on you, and they act in a way that they may be threatened by you, and they may cast aspersions on you. They may throw you in the bus. I feel bad for those folks. I'm not going to be that person. I'm definitely not going to be that person to myself. I'm not going to throw myself under the bus. I'm not going to downplay myself. I'm not going to talk myself down. I'm not going to listen to music or various things. I'm not going to take in inputs. I'm not going to be around the cousin that's telling me I'm not going to be able to do this. So I love yourself. Yeah, that's a summary right there. Love yourself and build yourself up. Another way of self-love real quick too is doing the work. So if you know that you have a deficit, let's go get what you need. If you need therapy, if you need career coaching, if you need interview prep, if you need negotiation prep, like Radia mentioned, if you need technical help in your job, you need to become a better writer. If you need to become a better programmer, go do that and find people who will give you the truth. Let's seek the truth and move towards a better truth.
Most definitely. Lakeisha asked, do you really think people can bring their authentic self to work? I find imposter syndrome comes to the forefront because we battle with being who we truly are and default to bringing the representative. Hey, would you want to grab that one?
Wait, hold up. So the representative, is that a thing?
Yeah.
So when Haywood was talking about that voice.
Oh yeah, you don't have a voice, Daniel?
Oh, come on.
I know you got.
I've definitely used that voice here, many times. But the representative, that's a great name. I appreciate you. I learned something new today.
Yeah. Radia, can you just say the last part of that question again?
Sure. I'll just read the question. Do you really think people can bring their authentic self to work? I find imposter syndrome comes to the forefront because we battle with being who we truly are versus bringing the representative.
Yeah, I think that introduces risk, which introduces the fear trigger. And we can't truly enjoy our jobs if we're also managing the representative, right? So bringing your authentic self is really the only way that you can succeed in your job in a way that feels and empowers you. And I understand, like, there is some fear there because you feel that you're going to be too much, or whatever attributes you attach to your authentic self. You feel that environment can't handle it, and that's 95% not the truth, right? Like, I think most people, you bring your authentic self. They hired you for a reason. You are good at your job. There's this sense that corporations just go around hiring people by accident, or hiring people and not really knowing who they are in a world where they have access to your Facebook page, your Instagram page, your TikTok. They know who you are when you walk in the door. So they may know more about your authentic self than you do at that point. They do their due diligence. So there is a risk that you have to take. Because we are the smart people we manage, and we are, people of color and Black, we have to manage the folks around us in a way that others don't. But I would say, absolutely bring your authentic self to work and see how folks react and adapt to you, because that is something that they will do.
I want to try to get to one more question here. How do you combat imposter syndrome when you are very successful in your career but didn't graduate college? Dan, you want to grab that one?
Sure, I will. And I'm glad I didn't have to answer the previous one. Thanks for taking that on, because I struggled out a little bit, just as a Jamaican-born Nigerian American who very much presents, I'm blessed. I can speak I have a representative voice, and that helps me get through a lot of hoops. So to answer this question, how how would somebody who doesn't have a college degree, who's very successful, love to see it, by the way, let's get that case study, let's write that book and inspire some more folks, combat imposter syndrome. Wow. So obviously I haven't experienced that. Wow, there's actually one person that I would love to ask that. He actually eventually got a degree, which I'm like, why? Because I have two two undergraduate degrees. Don't ask me why. And I'm so anti-school, and I'm a beneficiary of the privilege of having gone to schools and having a degree that says computer science. So just want to put the truth out there in that sense. And my answer to this is going to be very much, aligned with what I've said before. So perhaps Haywood or someone else can add more value here. But what I would say is that first, understanding that truth that I put in the chat, and I would have been remiss to not say this out loud, but everything you have is inside of you. You've gotten this far without a degree. You've obviously, whatever proxies, like a degree is a proxy. So there is to what extent is it internal story that you're telling yourself that some people are looking at it, or to what extent are you actually hearing from others? You're getting external voices that are, hey, oh, you don't have a degree. So how do you respond to that trigger? And do you have something to say to enforce? So without that full context, it's hard to kind of like give a direct, you should do this or that. But I believe if you can affirm that, hey, this is where I'm at, you actually have that resume, that brag list, that's greater than any college degree. When folks were in college partying, whatever, the story I'm telling myself is, yeah, that's cool that y'all were partying, but I had to go work and actually gain experiences that allowed me to do what I'm doing now, such that I manage people who went to college, and I'm able to bring a different perspective. I would actually tell a different story rather than, oh, I'm missing XYZ, the deficit story that others might be telling you, or you might be hearing at this point. It may be that you're not telling, you're over it. But other people might be still kind of putting you down. At some point, you're like, actually, 70% of Americans didn't go to school. That's actually you want me in the room, didn't go to college or finish college. You want me in the room to provide that perspective. In fact, I'm going to go bring all these other cats and find this untapped potential that y'all can't see because you're so tied to the proxy of college. So I'm telling a different story for myself, to others. I'm owning my truth. I'm being my authentic self, which is, this is what I've done, and I am valuable. I know you already said you're accomplished, and you know this. Making sure that others recognize that as well and respect it, because we've grown, like we're doing things, and we're making things happen.
Mm-hmm. And Brandy, I would also suggest maybe getting a mentor if you don't have one as of yet. That could be very beneficial to help you along your career journey, building your confidence, getting feedback. That's the word. That's the golden word for the evening, getting that great feedback. And also just having someone that is kind of on your side and is there to help you along the way. But I think that's, don't stress that you don't have a college degree and you're already doing your thing. Go ahead, Haywood. I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off.
No, that's all right. This is really quick. I think there's a key word in what the person asked, and that was but. I am successful in my career, but, well, we can really just end the sentence right there. The rest of it, I don't have a college degree. Those are fixable problems. If you want to get a college degree, go get one. But you are already successful in your career, and you are self-proclaiming that. So just self-proclaim the rest. It's like, I'm successful in my career without a college degree. What happens if I were to get a college degree? Holy smoke! Now I'm a world destroyer. So reframing that word, but is so horrible. But like reframing that statement so that it's more about your successes and less about what you don't have, like puts that person on the path where it's like we're reframing our mindset now, and we're solution oriented and less like self-sabotaging.
And I just wanted to quickly, we're going to start to wrap it up, but I wanted to quickly let everybody know that there are 4 types of imposter syndrome. You can look these up and see if any of them apply to you, and then you can work on getting rid of it. because I want us to get rid of imposter syndrome in 2022. Let's do it this year. The first one is the perfectionist. And this is a person, obviously, who just wants to have everything perfect. They are excessively set high goals for themselves. And when they fail to reach a goal, they experience major self-doubt and worry. The next one is a Superman or Superwoman. They're convinced that they're phonies, and they often push themselves to work harder and harder to measure up. But this is just a false cover-up for their insecurities, and the work overload may harm them mentally. The next one is the natural genius. People with this type believe that they need to be a natural genius, such as they judge their competencies based on ease and speed as opposed to their efforts. In other words, if they take too long to master something, they feel ashamed. The next one is the soloist. People who suffer from this, they don't like to ask for help. They feel like asking for help is a weakness, and they like to be very independent and don't want to work with others because I guess they don't want others to know that they are a fraud. And then the last one is the expert. The expert measures their competence based on what and how much they know or what they can do, believing that they will never know enough. They fear being exposed as inexperienced or unknowledgeable. So those are the types of imposter syndrome. And I believe that I have suffered from like a bit of this and a bit of that and a few of those. And
I was going to ask, because like it can be intersectional, right? Like,
yeah.
We can go, okay.
Yeah.
I think I got like two of those.
Yeah. Someone said, am I a four-way hybrid? Yes. So let's see. Okay, so we are a little bit over time. I want to respect everyone's time. I know it's after work, but I just want to thank everyone. Gentlemen, do you have any closing words before we close out?
I just want to thank you guys for the opportunity. I hope that everyone got some good information from today. I really hope that there's a way for us to continue to connect on this topic. This isn't a one and done thing. Folks will flow in and out of this at different times. And if there's ever a chance, or if you really need someone to speak with just to bounce ideas off of, I'm not an expert in the space, but I very much can share my experiences and some of the things that I've done to overcome it. So my door is always open. But I hope that we also lean on each other from a community standpoint to keep the discussion going.
Wonderful. Daniel?
Thank you again for the opportunity to be here with the NAMIC community and to learn with you all. I've learned so much in process. I was taking notes, hope y'all were as well. I do hope the conversation continues and we're able to find solutions in service of ourselves as well as the larger community. I put a couple of requests for products out there, and if anybody wants to chat about that, that would be great. One of my parting words I'd say is that, as I mentioned, everything you need is inside of you. I believe that God is inside of all of us and in all of our hearts. And if we can hold to that love that drives out all fear, and we can actively do the work to combat those triggers from resulting in things that affect us negatively, we'll all be in a better place for our families, for ourselves, our families, and our communities. And I would love to connect with any of you here and continue to be in conversation with the NAMIC community. So thank you again, Haywood, for being on the panel with me, and Radia for inviting me into the entire NAMIC community.
Yes, and we dropped some resources in the chat. These are articles, books, YouTube videos, things that we have all compiled together that we think will help you on your journey of combating imposter syndrome and finding, oh, they say you don't see them. Let me see, maybe let me drop them again. Let me do it one more time. You know what, I'll send it in a thank you note. I'll send in a thank you email and it'll be much neater and easier to read. Everybody's on that list. My last thing I just want to say is, everyone, please show yourself some grace. You are enough. We got this. We've come this far. I know it's been tough, rough, hard, but look, we're here. We made it. We got this. So thank you, everyone. I just so appreciate you coming to join us this evening. I cannot wait to see you all in person. We are going to prosper this year. It's going to be a great year for all of us. And reach out to me, connect with all of us on LinkedIn. Don't hesitate, don't be shy, reach out, and we're here for you. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night and stay safe. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.